and welcome to this week's YouTube video. Today I would like to show you how I painted this rough collie in Procreate. This artwork took me 5 hours, so it is not possible to show you it stroke by stroke, but I can talk through the principle of how to paint in this loose style so that if you want to have a go at your own piece of artwork from your own reference photo, you'll know how to do it. Before I show you the time-lapse video, a brief word about the brushes I used. It was a mixture of Procreate brushes and ones I bought online. The Procreate brushes I used were wet acrylic, turpentine brush and oil paint brush. The brushes I bought were from Tip Top Brushes and I got their Pro oil paint brushes. I also have their free brushes which you can download from their site. I will put a link in the description if you want to try them. From the Pro Oil Paint Kit, I used the Blend Stamp Wax, the Fine Wet Liner, the Feathered Bristle, the Dry Textured Smudger, and from their free brushes, I used the Master Oil. You'll notice that all the brushes produce a variety of wet strokes. And that's what you'll need for this unfinished effect. No one brush will give me the strokes I want. I need to layer my strokes on top of each other in multiple transparencies. Let's now have a look at the time-lapse video and I will speak about what I am doing as I go along. For speed, I have drawn straight over my reference photo and have put this line drawing on a separate layer which sits at the top of my layers panel. I will use this line drawing to check my drawing throughout this painting. If you want to practice your drawing skills, I suggest having a go freehand and not tracing. Number 1, remove the detail. The most important thing to do with this sort of style is to start off loose. I am drawing my dog in as little detail as possible. We call this the blocking stage. If I show you the reference photo and then remove the detail, you will see what I mean. I am starting off with my main blocks of colour, which I've edited down to a limited number of values. The best way to do this is to squint at your reference photo. If you do this, you'll notice that the detail disappears and you are left with only the obvious areas. I have used the wet acrylic brush for the blocking stage. Number 2, layers. At this point I realised I'd rather unhelpfully painted my dog on the same layer as my background. Ideally, I would have kept both background and dog separate as it makes it easier. You'll notice as I progress with this painting that I just keep painting over my dog. This is because I haven't kept them separate. It's not a disaster though and can have some advantages. The dog will really integrate into the background in this way, but at points I also have to make sure I rub any unwanted strokes covering my dog out that I don't want to use. At various points when I'm thinking an area isn't working, I may try putting an effect on a layer. For example, this layer has a divide effect on it. The next layer is normal, and I begin to work over it because it's too bright. Later, I add a vivid light effect to one of my layers. Again, I create a new layer over the top so that they become integrated into the artwork. Very often when you add an effect to a layer, it will require adjustment in the layers above to make it work. You'll see I had 8 layers that relate to the background and 13 layers that relate to the dog. This piece is very experimental. Generally, when I do a section that I like and don't want to ruin it, I will start another layer. Number 3, the composition. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with this painting when I started it. By starting loose, the aim was just to keep adding and sharpening up the detail. As a general rule, my central point of focus can be more detailed, and as I move further out, I can lose detail. If you need a bit of help with losing the detail from your reference photo, and you have access to Photoshop, try using the Medium tool, found in Filter, Noise, Medium. I usually move the slider up to about 15 pixels. You can then choose the areas you want to keep more detailed. As a general rule, stick to your area of interest. So here my dog's face is the most rendered part, followed by the body. As I move down the painting, I lose detail to the point that the legs are lost in the snowy ground. Think about your composition when you do that though. If I reduce this painting down into its most basic shapes, you'll notice that to create symmetry along the top, I have developed the tail as well, and I've made it almost as detailed as the face. You'll also notice that I've used the same orange in the tip of the tail as I have in the chest area. Again, this is to create symmetry. I have suggested the feet with both a value change and temperature change, so your eye now follows this line across the painting. This helps add interest and tells my viewer how I want them to look at the artwork. Number 4, changing the background. I am not using the same colours for my background that you can see in the reference photo. You'll also see that I have changed the value as well. If you watch the time-lapse video back faster, you'll see that I don't actually figure out my background colour until 3/4 of the painting is done. I am doing this by eye, which means I'm trying it, seeing if it works. If it doesn't, I delete it. Don't be afraid to be experimental. If you are not sure, just start a new layer and see how it looks. You can always delete it if you don't like what you've done. Number 5, broken colour. If we go back to the reference photo, you'll see even in my non-detailed version, there is an element of broken colour in the background. Broken colour adds interest to a painting, and it is a technique artists use all the time. Look at what happens if I adjust the background of my finished piece so that it's all one colour. It's not as interesting, is it? How do I create this look? Start with your background in one colour, then create subtle colour shifts. For example, if blue was my background, I could move my slider slightly left towards a greener blue, or I could move it right to more purple blue. Turn down your transparency to about 70% and add some strokes. If I want to do a slight value change, I can either stay in my original blue and move my slider up a bit to make it lighter, or I can move it down and make it a bit darker. I also have the option of a temperature change. I could make it quite dramatic and move my slider into an orange, or if my base colour was a warm temperature like a yellow, I could then move my slider into a cooler colour like a purple. Or I can do a saturation change. So I could choose a more saturated blue or a more muted blue. I just add varied strokes into my background in this way, and it helps make it more interesting. The most important thing to be aware of is to not vary your value too much. Keep them very similar, just vary your saturation, temperature or colour. Number 6, complementary colour. Complementary colours sit opposite each other on the colour wheel. When you put them together, they look amazing. As my dog's fur was a brown-orange, I chose to push my green more blue. I have my blue next to my orange. This creates colour contrast. For my background, I have chosen green, blue, purple. Notice how all the colours are next to each other on the colour wheel, so I already know before I do it that it will be harmonious. I have also used my background in the cooler areas of my dog's fur. So for example here, just make sure you turn your transparency right down to at least 30% and choose a brush that lays the colour on top rather than one that mixes the colours together. For example, the Blend Stump Wax brush. Number 7, edges. To get that lovely painterly feel in my artwork, it is important to have a range of hard edges, soft edges and lost edges. If you are unsure where to place these, try squinting at your reference photo. If you can still see the edge, then it will be a hard edge. If you can make it out, but it's not that clear, then make it a soft edge. And if you can no longer see it, it will be a lost edge. To create a soft edge, choose a really wet brush and turn down your opacity really low and then paint rigorously over your object, pulling the shape out into its background and then pushing your background into your shape. Number 8, brushwork. I am switching between my brushes, laying transparent strokes. I am trying to create a variety of marks. So for example, a textured mark against perhaps a wetter mark. It was actually quite hard to create the soft fur effect. I had to work hard to get it and was generally swapping between my turpentine brush and the blend stump wax brush. My strokes varied between trying to mix my colours together and laying the colour on top in a very transparent stroke. For example, imagine you are laying a sticker onto a piece of paper. You want that stroke to sit on top, uninterrupted by anything below it. This creates an effect whereby the bottom strokes show through in various transparencies. It is hard and time-consuming to achieve. Think of it in terms of building up the brushstroke layers. I'm going to show you quickly how to use the Blend Stump Wax brush. When you lay your strokes, you have to move your hand like this. Imagine you are stabbing at the screen and then vary it with quick scribbling strokes. The most important thing is that you are rigorous in your hand action. Notice also with this brush that I can select a really dark colour, but it will always paint lighter because it is so wet. You will need to bear this in mind when using it. And here it is, the finished piece, which is available for purchase from my website. I'll put a link in the description. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.